Welcome to the 3D Ghost universe, a place dedicated to 3D creation and 3D printing. In a previous video, I shared with you the creations I made during my first 8 months in my 3D journey. In this video, I will share more details about the workflows I used. So at the very beginning, I work on pumpkins. They are not my creations, they are coming from the Microsoft free library. And you will find this library in 3D Builder, for example. You can find things by clicking on the various category, and I think it's here, miniatures and figurines. Yeah, okay. So you cannot find it. Pumpkin. No, it's not here because it have Jack-o'-lantern name. So now you have the object in 3D Builder and it's ready. And you don't even have to adapt the size if you want to print it, because you will be able to modify it in Cura. So it's really simple. The only thing that I made is open it and of course saving as, and I choose STL object in order to have the simplest way, the simplest format to print it. And this object is easy to print, don't need any post-processing, just preparation for painting with brushes, markers, and trying some varnish with mica powder, for example. The next object is my own creation. I tried to create a cat in Paint 3D, so as you can see with the object right now, the only thing that I did was combine few shapes. You have, for example, this one right here for the head. You have the pyramid for here, this one for creating the legs, for example. What do we have more? The ball right here for the foot, sorry. I have some manual creation for the tail, and here for the mustache. The problem is that this is not a printable, real good printable object. For example, as you can see right here, those part of the object are floating. So of course the result is not perfect, but it was quite fun. And as you can see on the picture, a little post-processing with painting and varnish and some mica powder, white mica powder on it. And it's a cool first thing, I think. The next creation is something that was not supposed to be print, but it was the famous donuts from the Blender Guru tutorials. Really helpful to learn Blender, but after the creation, I really want to try it on my 3D printer, and the result is not so bad after painting and varnish. Donuts are a classic for learning Blender and 3D motion regarding a realistic way. The other way to do good creation, great creation with Blender is to create low poly objects. Unfortunately, I don't have all the tutorial, the workflow to share with you, but as you can see, I created from a cylinder, this is a mesh, the basic mesh. I created this low poly dog with a mirror effect. The right side and the left side are exactly the same, at the exception of the tail that was the last part, because there is no symmetrical possibility to create the tail like this one. In order to create the object, I need an image, a reference image, so I go to dimensions.com and I'm looking for not a guinea pig, not this time, Chihuahua. Here we go, you can see the Chihuahua. You can find some images that you will be able to download and to use as references in Blender. And my low poly dog became quickly my favorite object to try my new filaments, new colors, new materials. It's a good way to try new prints, and I'm happy with that. And then I thought that I was ready for a really more complicated object, a decorative one based on a Harry Potter character. It was quite difficult. It was probably a mistake to try this after only 2 or 3 months, but it was a good experience and I learned a lot. I created the character and the accessories with Blender. You have a book, you have the broom, you have the wand, the shape of the body, of course, And what I decided to do was to create a white printing in order to paint, sorry, each and every part with different color, like on the references of the pictures. So what I did was creating with the cube, morphing, we will say, some kind of object. For the hair, it was the most difficult part, and I have to use the sculpting part, of course. And we can see that objects are not forming one mesh. All the objects are different parts. Regarding what I want to paint, I'm not good enough with the brush, so I decided to create directly on the mesh the object, the eyes, for example, on the mouth, or the eyebrows. The objects are in 3D, so I will have to paint it with my marker. So it's easy for me to work like that in order to have a good paint. Of course, I made a lot of mistakes with this object. First of all, the resolution is really high to work with, and I apply all my modifier. It was a huge mistake. I don't have to apply the modifier. It will be easy for me to work without applying the modifier, but I was learning. Then I didn't realize that the head will be huge and will have a weight problem and a balance problem with the body. So I have to cut things, and after the printing, in order to have one piece object, and because of the unbalanced head, we will say, I had to cheat a little bit with a toothpick. For the stage, I worked with 3D Builder, simply creating an object, a cube, that I resized. I create cylinders in order to do the connection and the cuts for the object, and I insert some lasers. I have a specific video about it, so I will not talk about it in this video. But the stage is created with 3D Builder at the cuts that I created for the object. So here we are in 3D Builder, and quickly I will explain to you that I import the meshes created in Blender, and then I had little cylinders on the mesh. For example, I had this cylinder on the arm, put the arm right here, and create a subtract with edit subtract in order to have the hole inside this one. So I created little connectors. It was not the good way to do that. It's better to create directly those kind of connectors in Blender with a boolean, for example, but I had a lot of problem with booleans because my work on the meshes was not good. So booleans cannot work when you have such a high resolution and troubles with your mesh. I will not explain to you exactly what was the problem, but the normals was not good. The directions of the normal was not good, so the boolean cannot work. So I used 3D Builder. It was easier for me. Finally it worked, but it was not the good way to do that. But hey, I'm here to share my problems, my experience, and the first try that I made in order to create connections for various meshes was a bad idea. It was a bad idea to do that. And the second problem is that, for example, this cylinder is too weak for such a big head and big hairs. Of course, when you have this side of head and hairs, the connectors will need to be bigger than that. So it was a mistake too, but I was learning, and finally the realization is not so bad, so it's okay. I think that even if the process is not good in the creation with Blender, the final result, after post-processing, after painting, is quite cool, to be honest. I'm not... it's not a shame to create that. I'm quite happy with the result. My next project was to create one of my childhood hero in a Funko Pop style. I'm talking about, and I will say that in French, Tintin. So what I decided to create is, of course, a printable object, but something that I will print with various PLA of colors. So I decided to create various parts that I will be able to print without doing any painting. That was my objective. So if we are taking a look at what the final result should be, you can see various parts: blue one, brown, white ones, with a skin. With a skin PLA, I will work for the head, for the hands, sorry. Yellow one for the hair. So what I learned from my previous creation, I didn't apply any modifier, and you will see that I'm working, if I'm hiding the modifier, with quite a low poly texture or low poly meshes. You can see, for example, for the body, here we are. So I'm working with that on Blender. Maybe, sorry, I will go back to the solid view. Yeah, it's much better. So of course, a mirror modifier working on one side of the object and the other side is created exactly the same, and I'm working with, sorry, and I'm working with quite low poly things in order to, quite low poly meshes, sorry, in order to create something simple, easy to extrude. For example, for working on the hair, my technique is quite simple. I'm taking, here we will go, I'm selecting, for example, those faces. I will duplicate them and I will create a new object, and this new object obviously will be the hair. So even with that, without applying the modifier, the object is still quite difficult to work because the computer is calculating a lot. So it's not an easy object because of all those modifiers. But we can check the hair. We'll hide the subdivision modifier, and here you can see this is an extension of the head, something that I work with resizing. And then I extruded here some faces in order to create this shape, and then with a subdivision modifier we have something great to print. So of course the next part was to export. For example, the hair, file, export, STL, and then I'm exporting parts after parts. A part for me is something with the same color. So for example, the body, after applying the modifier, is here, and hands are not with the body because first it will be difficult to print it, but also because it's not the same color. So regarding the hands, it's a different object. I worked with the same bad techniques, I will say, because after exporting the meshes, I decided to use 3D Builder in order to create cylinders, to create the connectors. Still not the good way, still have some troubles after the print. I have to glue some parts. The result is quite good, to be honest. I'm just not satisfied with the fact that I was not able to print eyes, eyebrows, and mouth. Even by using a boolean, when I was printing the eyebrows, they didn't have exactly the same shape because the mesh is too thick to print. So I think that now, after more months of learning, I will be able to recreate this shape. It's probably a future project, and we will see how to work on it. But when I created that object, the only thing that I want to do is For example, taking this eyebrow, putting it right here, doing a boolean in order to create a hole on the head, and just have, in theory, just have to glue the printed eyebrow on the head. It was not working, and as you can see, I cheat a little bit by deciding to paint what I was not able to print. After that, I decided to try some modification on already existing STL and not always creating everything from scratch. One of these objects was this Naruto STL that I took on Cult3D or Thingiverse, I can't remember. But I work on it on Blender. You can see the original mesh. With this mesh I had a plane and I decided to cut the head. So by doing that, I will have my own body. I want to work on it. I simply add a cylinder because I want to put a new head on it. I wanted to create with a funny style. So you will see that you will probably remember this head. It was what I created for my last project. I had here some things in order to create the headband of Naruto. I sculpt, we will hide this, I sculpt the hair, go back. I took this grab on the y-axis in order to put it correctly, resized it, and after that a boolean, a cut, and then I will be able to print this in white in order to do post-processing and paint it. This with various color, the head in the skin color, the headband that I will paint, and the hair in yellow. And here you can see the final result. It's quite good, I think. And I almost forget to tell you that for the back of the head, I worked with a 3D pen and an iron solder in order to create this strange effect for the hair. And finally, creating the stage is quite easy with 3D Builder. You insert an object, an hexagon, okay, it's great. You just have to resize it in order to have the exact stage that you want. And after that, I will create an object from a text. I have a special video about it. Okay, no texture. You can do what you want regarding the size, the placement, and then after that, you can have a quick edit. We'll work a little bit on the size. Okay, for me, edit, subtract, and then you have the effect that the effect that I was looking for. And I used quite the same techniques in order to create some fake phones with changing cards that you can put inside. It's simply a smartphone coming from a free STL, and I created cards by inserting the face of some famous characters and the name of them simply with the same techniques in 3D Builder. Next creations are a mix of all we just talked about. It's mainly modification of STL I download and some post-processing work with painting, varnish and mica powder. For the Unicorn Harley Quinn project, it's quite the same. I download some STL from Cult3D or Thingiverse. This cute Harley Quinn, this cute unicorn, and after some work on Blender, I created a mix of those in order to have Harley Quinn, the body of the unicorn, and the core. And after a little bit of post-processing, here you have the results. The main problem with this one, if we go back to the 3D creation, is the fact that it was quite difficult to print these things. And after my print, because of bad support, I was a beginner, sorry, I had to do a little post-processing on it, and I work with the iron solder tool in order to glue it and to without any scars on the object. And after the paint, I think it's quite okay. For this object, the workflow is quite different. I download an STL, and after a few modification, few sculpting on the head, we will see that the result is here. So the modification, of course, it's about the head. I work on some sculpting in order to create more effect right here, to have a less hard face. I created a cube right here that I sculpt in order to create the shape of the upper body and to create a clean, I don't know the word in English, a clean aspect, to don't have something weird from the body and the head. So it's a neck, it's quite good, I think. What I had, of course, is here this stone, and inside the stone we had the signature that we find on PNG, on Google Image, and I do a boolean in order to have the signature inside of the mesh. And I print it in marble, and I think that the effect is fun. To be honest with you, it's one of my best realization, even if I don't like the aspect of the mesh. I think it's quite horrible. I don't want to have it in my house, but the realization is good. Because I'm a big fan of electronics, I decided that I want to try to create some object and to add a little bit of life inside. So I worked on a lamp with a white LED inside. I created this lamp in Blender, and you will see that it's a multiple object. Of course, you have the cloud, you have the letters, you have the moon. And what we have here in material preview in white is what I printed in white. You have to create a shape really thick, 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeters, in order to have enough transparency to allow the light to be visible when you are right here, because your strip will be glue right here. So I glued LED strip right here. It goes through the letters and through the white part in order to create the light. The cactus lamp is a multi-part object. You can see the preview with some materials. So we have the bottom, we have this, and if we hide it, we will see that the object is hollow, the object is empty, in order to have the alimentation and the light. Here you have a white piece of plastic with only 1 or 1.5 millimeters in order to have a clean white and some transparency effect for the light. And of course, the object is empty. And finally, I work on a little project, a quick project with the kid, in order to create a magic box that will be open only with your RFID card and a little screen in order to have some messages or cool words. I don't want to talk more about Arduino, and maybe the channel will evolve with some Arduino videos or some projects with both 3D printing and Arduino. And finally, those ghosts are the result of a creation, transforming a cylinder into Blender into something to sculpt and something funny. I hope that this long video was not boring and that you find some inspirations, and in the future, for the future project, we will more work with tutorials format.